Hello, and welcome back to NFL Talk of Elite Wages. This is my NFL Week 5 episode for the rest of my NFL Week 5 slate betting card. And Thursday night football was Thursday night football, and obviously I'll break that down next week, and we'll get straight into this episode today with my plays for this weekend. And obviously it's NFL UK week, so we've got an NFL UK game which is down in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium down in London, and it'd be rude of me not to have a play on this game, so we'll get straight into it. We'll kick off with New York Jets and Minnesota Vikings. And it only feels like yesterday that I was actually in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium watching Aaron Rodgers and the Packers face the Giants, but this week Aaron Rodgers returns to London leading the New York Jets. The Jets, they suffered another loss last week against the Denver Broncos, and considering to a lot of people they're meant to be contenders in the AFC this season, they've looked nowhere near that so far. They've had a fairly routine win against the Patriots, and they lost 13 points to last year's Super Bowl runner-up, the 49ers. And they left it very late against the Titans to get the win there, and again lost to the Broncos by 1 point, that was a really, really shocking result. If they are to be considered contenders this year, these are the teams they expected to beat comfortably, or at least be competitive. Against the Broncos last week, their defense did a really, really nice job of being able to keep them in the game. Jets defense held the Broncos to -7 yards on 7 completed passes at one point, and they only allowed Bo Nix to throw 1 touchdown all game. He actually finished with 60 yards, but ultimately he took the win. The New York Jets their play calling was really questionable. Not giving the ball to either Hall or Allen on first and goal on the 1 yard line ultimately meant they had to settle for a field goal instead of 7 points. Rodgers moves him down the field late, and he got him into field goal distance for a potential field goal, walk-off field goal winning to win the game. Ultimately missed that field goal as well, and the Jets are meant to be contenders. They didn't score a touchdown against a team considered to be weaker than this Vikings team, and they just haven't looked good all season so far anyway. As for the Vikings, they are currently one of only 2 unbeaten teams, so it's only the Minnesota Vikings and the Kansas City Chiefs that are unbeaten so far. They've beaten 3 tough teams in the 49ers, the Texans and the Packers. In the first 3 games, they averaged only 10 points per game allowed to their opponent, and they managed to hold off the Packers after they were leading 28-3, and the Packers tried to make a miraculous comeback, but Minnesota held on and won 31-20 in the end, 29 in the end. Sam Darnold, he's been a key member of the revival of this offense, and he certainly stepped up after losing Kirk Cousins obviously in the off-season, and then JJ McCarthy in pre-season. He's played better than anyone had hoped. He is currently leading the league with 11 passing touchdowns, and he's got the 7th most passing yards, and he also holds the 3rd highest quarterback rating as well. Justin Jefferson is playing one of his best seasons so far. Obviously it's only early. He's tied first for touchdowns with 1 in each game, and he's 4th for receiving yards, averaging just under 100 yards per game. Their running back, Aaron Jones, he's averaging over 100 scrimmage yards per game, and he has 2 total touchdowns. And to be honest, it seems like everywhere you look on the Vikings offense, there's someone near the top of the list in their position. On offense, the Vikings are significantly higher in the pass rankings, rush rankings, and just as a total offense as a whole. On defense, Minnesota sit 1 place higher than the Jets for points allowed per game, but once again, the Vikings rank significantly higher in the run defense, and the Vikings allow the 2nd least rushing yards allowed. The Jets are down in 12th they actually allow the 12th most. The Jets have the best pass defense in the league, and the Vikings have the worst ranked passing defense in the league. But I do think that could change. The Vikings have no problem getting back to the quarterback. They actually lead the league in sacks per game. I think it's just over 4. And the Jets have just recently allowed 5 sacks on Rodgers last week against the Broncos. Brian Flores likes to blitz, and it's certainly working for him at the moment. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went back to that again this week and try to get to Rodgers as much as possible. I think with a recent loss to the Broncos and the Vikings looking really, really strong to begin the season, I think this means the Vikings can get the job done in London this week. The Jets, they've had a fairly reasonable schedule to start the season, and many, and including myself, would have predicted them to be 3-1, whereas the Vikings have had a difficult schedule facing the Packers, Texans and 49ers all in successive weeks, and they've managed to handle the business. I certainly didn't put them as being a 4-0 team after seeing their schedule. I had it more 2-2 at a push, so they've definitely overachieved in what they've done so far. And if you're going to look at teams that have overachieved and on the brink of turning it around, and teams who have overachieved and on the brink of regression, we've got 2 prime candidates in this game, in the Jets as underachievers and the Vikings as overachievers. But with that being said, the Vikings have faced 3 potential playoff-bound teams where the Jets have only faced 1, and they lost. And if you compare those 2 games, the Jets took a 13-point loss to the 49ers, and the Vikings pulled off a really solid victory against them. At this moment in time, I wouldn't call the Jets contenders, but if you are going to class them as that, then the Vikings will have faced 4 potential playoff teams in 4 straight weeks. And with the way they've been playing so far, I don't think this Jets team, the way they are playing, I don't think they're the team to force a regression to the Vikings. So I'm going to happily take the Vikings to win by a field goal, and that's something that they were able to do in the opening 3 games. But as this is a London game, and your boy is from the UK, it would be rude of me not to want to play more in this game. It's an early game for me, so it's 2:30 in the afternoon. I think it's about 9:30 Eastern time for you Americans over there. So it's getting up early, so why not play more than one thing in this game? So I see a huge potential for the over in this matchup. We've seen what the Vikings can do. They've managed to score points on every team they've faced, averaging 29 points per game. They've scored 23 points or more in all 4 games. And as for the Jets, as I mentioned, they're yet to get going. They're averaging only 19 points per game. But they've got the talent, and they've got the quarterback. Certainly got the quarterback and running back committee to get them into games and score more points. Both teams' averages added together takes us over the game total of 40.5 anyway. But as shown last week, the Vikings can be unlocked, and the Jets certainly have a team that has the potential to score points. It also has to be said, I was in this stadium a few years back when the Packers faced the Giants. The stadium was absolutely electric. It wouldn't surprise me to see both teams want to come over here and put on a show for the UK fans. So another thing as well, in each of the last 8 games in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it's had 40 or more points. So the total for this game is 40.5. I'm fairly confident that the Vikings will get the win, and I'm fairly confident that both teams will contribute to the over in this game. So we're going to lock in 1 unit for the Vikings minus 2.5 at odds of 1.95, and another unit on the Vikings and Jets over 40.5 at odds of 1.9. The next play, let's have a look down my list. The next play we're going to take is we're going to go with the Washington Commanders game, and they're playing the Browns, and everybody knows about Jaden Daniels. Daniels and the Commanders, they've been on fire the last few weeks, especially on offense. They beat the Bengals in a shootout in their game 2 weeks ago, and they played a really solid game against the Cardinals last week. Daniels finished just shy of 300 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdown passes, which he also rushed a touchdown as well. And in fact, he scored more touchdowns than he threw incompletions in that game. Obviously, he only had 2 incompletions. He scored 3 total touchdowns, and that was in the game against the Bengals. And he started off the same way against the Cardinals. Half time, he was 14 from 16 passing with another rushing touchdown, and he finished the game only misplacing 4 passes on his way to making history. And that historic feat was no other player in NFL history has a higher completion percentage than Daniels in their first 4 NFL games. So he's absolutely taken this league by storm. The Commanders ran in 4 touchdowns in this game. They had 5 scoring drives in the first 7 against the Cardinals. They were just absolutely dominant. They scored 42 points, 440 plus offensive yards on the day. And that means they've scored 80 points in the last 2 weeks, and they were both on the road. Now they get to come home to the Commanders, back to Washington, and they're holding a 3-1 record. The Commanders have been really efficient to start the season too. They average only 0.3 giveaways per game, which is the least in the league. And when we head over to the Browns, you can see why I'm persuaded by the -3 for the Commanders in this game. So the Browns, it's been, it's common knowledge that the Browns haven't played well to start the season. They haven't yet scored 20 points in a single game so far. And Deshaun Watson, he hasn't thrown for 200 passing yards in any game yet. Watson's been very poor, but I'm not sure if it's his fault or his receivers. It would help if Amari Cooper would run in the right direction on his routes. I'm sure that would help Watson and his stats and things like that. But the Browns have been humbled by the Giants and the Raiders, and they were 2 of last season's bottom 10 offenses. They've also shot themselves in the foot with penalties. They are one of the most flagged teams in the NFL so far, and the defense just looks tired, especially against the Raiders. In that game, the Browns jumped down to a 10-0 lead after scoring a touchdown and a field goal in their opening 2 drives. But after that, they just could not get anything going. The game was made close due to a defensive fumble recovered for a touchdown. But the fourth quarter just turned into a pump fest, and eventually the Raiders held on to their 4-point win. So in simple terms, they've just not been good enough. I view this game in a very similar way to the Vikings and the Jets game. Both teams are prime candidates for overachieving team, which would be the Browns, and the other being, obviously the Commanders being the overachieving team. But obviously the Browns will figure it out soon. There's no doubt about that. And the Commanders, they're not going to stay this hot forever. But I feel like this matchup, it's come at the right time for the Commanders. They're clicking, firing on all cylinders. The Browns can't get anything positive going at all. It's a complete contrast in the way they're playing. Browns poor, Commanders very good and positive. I'm definitely not willing to back Watson anytime soon, and I think Jaden Daniels, he might just be him. The Browns, they've had more favourable schedule out of the 2 teams to start the season, and it was definitely a winnable schedule in theory, and according to my own preseason predictions, they should be a 3-1 team right about now, but maybe 2-2 at worst. But there isn't anything positive about losing to the Giants or the Raiders. The Commanders, they've without a doubt had the toughest schedule, and they've navigated some really tricky teams. The Browns are definitely going to be their toughest game so far, especially facing Myles Garrett and his defense. Interestingly, while I was researching this game, I found out that the Browns have allowed 20 points or more to their opponents in losses. And when they allow 20 points or more to their opponents when they lose, they also allow them to cover a -3. So far this season, the Browns have allowed 20 points 3 times. They lost all 3, and they allowed the other team to cover -3 in all of those games as well. If you go back to last season, they had 7 losses, including the playoffs, and in all 7 losses, they conceded 20 plus points, and in all 7 losses, they allowed the other team to cover -3. So that was really interesting when I saw this line as well. The Commanders, they've been offensively hot to start the year. They've scored 20 plus in all 4 games. They averaged 30 points per game, and in their 3 wins, they covered a -3 in 2, and in the 3rd, it pushed. At this moment in time, I feel like it's very difficult to back this Browns team. and I know it's only a matter of time before they figure things out, but I'm going to ride on Daniels and his hot hand, and I'm going to back him and the Commanders to get it done at home by 3 points. So we're going to go 1 unit, Commanders -3 at 1.85. The next game I've got on my list is the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals. So that's a AFC North rivalry. And both of these AFC North rivals have started off in the worst possible way. The Ravens lost their first 2 games, arguably should be 3-1, but they did win their last 2, which is a positive sign. The Cincinnati Bengals, they got their first win last week against the Panthers, who were last season's worst team in the NFL, so take that with a pinch of salt. I certainly have. But they've struggled to get past teams they should be beating. Headed into the season, I expected both the Ravens and the Bengals to be 3-1 by this point, but instead the Bengals are 1-3, and Ravens obviously 2-2. Despite this record, the Bengals actually haven't played bad football. All 3 losses were 1-score losses. They've been averaging 25 points per game, which is top 10 in the NFL. And offensively, they've done their job in scoring points. It's their defense that hasn't been able to do their job in stopping the other team from scoring. They've been averaging just under 25 points per game allowed, which is bottom 6 in the NFL. For the Ravens, they've also been doing their job on offense. They've scored 20 plus points in all 4 games. They've averaged 26.5, which is 5th in the league. And the defense has also done a solid job of limiting opponents' points, and they average 19.5 points allowed. So the defining factor within this game is undoubtedly going to be the run game from the Ravens. They've rushed the most times in the league with 138 rushing attempts. They have the most yards on the ground with 881, and they average the most yards per rush attempt at 6.4, and that's, well, the second place is 5.7. So that's quite a hefty little differential there between first and second place. This is actually a team that has more rushing attempts than passing attempts so far this season, and they've got more rushing yards than pass yards, and there's more rushing touchdowns from Derrick Henry than Lamar has thrown and rushed himself. So Derrick Henry has 7, Lamar Jackson has thrown and rushed 7. It seems like the more the opponent tries to stop the run, the worse it gets for them. So in week 4, so last week, the Ravens had 271 yards on the ground. Week 3 they had 274. Week 2 they had 151, and then in week 1 they had 185. Obviously week 1 and 2 were their 2 losses, hence the reason why they didn't hit the 200 mark in that game. But obviously the latter, so the 271 and the 274 were the 2 wins. I actually expect them to win this game, so I'm predicting more of a 200 plus rushing yard game from them. So yeah, and in the last 2 head-to-heads with between the Ravens and the Bengals, the Ravens ran for 178 and 157 last year, and you got to remember that was without Derrick Henry, that was with Joe Mixon. So the run has always been a big factor for this offense. And the bad news is the Bengals allow the 7th most rushing yards per game. If you go back to some of the people they've faced before, Stevenson for the Patriots rushed for 120 yards on his own. The Patriots rushed for 170 in total. Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs had 90, with the Chiefs having 149, and obviously they're not really known for the run game. There was 108 total rushing yards for Washington. Again, not a solid rushing team. And last week they had 104 for Chuba Hubbard and 155 for the Panthers in total. Obviously, the Ravens are significantly better rushing teams than all these. Obviously, New England Patriots are up there with them, but the Ravens are significantly better. If the Bengals can't stop the run, they're going to be in trouble, and the line for this game is -2.5 for the Ravens. The Bengals have allowed their opponents to cover this in 2 out of 4, and the Ravens have won by 3 or more points in both of their wins. So it's 50% for both teams in this one for a -2.5. In last season's matchups, the Ravens won both by 3 or more points, and they actually won it. They won by 3 or more points in all 14 games that they won last year, including the playoffs. So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to go the Ravens will win by a field goal in this game. But I'm also going to take the Ravens rushing line as well. So actually, I'm looking at it right now. The line for the Ravens has gone down to -2. So we're going to take Ravens -2 at 1.95. And we're going to take the Ravens rushing yard line at 163.5. Now remember, I tipped this in the Discord early last week. I think I posted it on Monday. It was before Monday Night Football games, so it's been in there since Monday, maybe Tuesday, I can't quite remember. But it's been there early week, so the line has been there. I got it, and the Discord got it at 163.5. I'm pretty sure it's going to have moved by now, but I'm happy to take this. If it's around 170, take it. If it's not, drop me a comment or drop me a message on Twitter or join the Discord. Ask me, and I'll reanalyze this one and get back to you with what I'm comfortable taking it up to. But again, we're going to 1 unit Ravens -2, and we're going to go 1 unit Ravens over 163.5 rushing yards at 1.9 odds as well. So talking about rushing, I have been given a segment for fantasy football this year, and that is going to be on Fantasy Game Day app, and that app is specifically for UK based players, and this basically allows you to be the GM of your own team, the general manager, the coach, whatever you want to call it, of your own team, where you have to pick a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. You get a flex position, and you also get a captain slot. Now the captain slot will give you double points, so it's best to pick your best player in that double points position. Skill position cannot be a quarterback, and my job in this segment is to give you my best bet on who to captain and who to play as a value pick, which is a pick I like to place for a player that's going to cost significantly less than the average amount. The average amount is 5,000. I like to try and get that between under 4, but around 3, to try and give you some more leeway when you're trying to buy those extra spicy value players. My significant picks in recent weeks have been Joe Mixon, who had over 40. J.K. Dobbins had over 40 as well in week 2. Dallas Goedert last week had in week 3 had 27. Last week was a bit of a bad week. I think both of my picks combined for 25 points. So this week we're going to try and get back into the high 30s / early 40s if possible. So for my captain slot this week, I'm going to go with Jamar Chase, which is the wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he is 6,200 coins in fantasy football on Fantasy Game Day app. Obviously, we just broke down the Ravens game, so as I mentioned, I expect the Ravens to want to run the ball. The Bengals are expected to be down majority of this game too. With their running back room not as good without Mixon, and with the Ravens holding the best defense against the run, their offense is virtually going to be fairly one-dimensional. It's going to be Joe Burrow, and it's going to be Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Luckily for them, they have Jamar Chase back, and Chase so far this season has 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, with the majority of those yards in the last 2 games. All of those touchdowns came in the last 2 games. I think he had just under 200 yards in the last 2 games. Joe Burrow, he's currently throwing the 6th most passing yards in the league, and Baltimore allow the 4th most passing yards per game. The Ravens are also sitting in 9th for most yards allowed to a wide receiving position. This is a game where they're going to need Jamar Chase if they want to have a good chance in this game. Jamar Chase is averaging 16.75 fantasy points on the Fantasy Game Day app, and I expect more than this week. I expect more. I'm going to predict he gets 5 receptions, 100 yards and a touchdown. That'll add up to roughly 21 points, and then double to be 42. And then we're going to flip over to my value pick, and obviously we're going to go back to the tight end position. Now, if you don't know about this and know why I target the tight end position, it is for fairly obvious reasons. Obviously, tight ends aren't used nearly as much as running backs or wide receivers. So they tend to get less points in daily fantasy football. So they average around 8, I think. But this week I'm picking this guy, and we have a potential huge upside in this. Brock Bowers, who is the tight end for the Raiders. He's going to cost you 3,600, and he's averaging 10.7 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 5 receptions and just over 500 yards per game. But this week, the Raiders are facing the Denver Broncos without Davante Adams. Patrick Surtain will more than likely be shadowing Jacoby Myers without Tay. Jacoby Myers will be wide receiver 1, so Patrick Surtain will try and take him out of the game, and that should leave the door open for Brock Bowers. The Broncos defend the tight end position fairly well, but again, I'm going to take a punt on this one based on potential usage without Davante Adams. Anything around his average numbers of 5 receptions and 50 yards, I would be happy with this week. So you can get both of these players for, let me do some adding up real quick, 9 points. You can get them for 9,800 coins, which is under the average for two players, which would be 10,000. So you can get those two, lock them in. Let me know in the comments if you get a tail, or let me know who you want to pick this week as well. And hopefully we all cash, and hopefully we all win fantasy. We're going to go straight back into my next play. It's going to be in the Giants and the Seahawks game, and this is the 3rd time this season I'm going to be betting on a Seahawks game, and I've won the first 2. Coincidentally, both times we're back in and over in some way, and this week I'm running it back again. The Seahawks, they've always been known for their skill players' ability. Ever since DK Metcalf came into the league, Geno Smith, he's been balling out to start the year. He leads the league in passing yards, averaging 295 passing yards per game. He's got 2 300-plus yard games already, and he threw for 395 in last week's loss to the Lions. It makes it easy for Geno when you have DK Metcalf, who averages around 91 yards per game. Tyler Lockett, he's known for his cool hands, and he's got a newfound confidence between himself and Smith and Jigba as well. If you add in Kenneth Walker, if you add in Kenneth Walker, who's a menace and a tough guy to bring down, and his number 2 guy, Charbonnet, as well, they've got 7 combined touchdowns in the first 4 games. You've got yourself a winning offense. This Seattle team is 9th in points scored per game, averaging 25, and they've scored 23 points or more in all 4. As well as that, they are averaging 3 touchdowns and 1 field goal per game. But not only are they averaging that, they are getting it as well. They've got 3 touchdowns and 1 field goal in 3 of their 4 games so far. They don't look like they will be stopped. They're looking like a really hot offense. And as for their opponents this week, the New York Giants, they're expected to be underdogs. Their defense has been fairly good to start the year, and they're actually in the bottom half of the league in points per game allowed, averaging 21. They have actually allowed 3 of their 4 opponents 21 points or under, and they include the last season's top 2 offensive teams. One of them includes the Cowboys. So they've been a really, really, overachieving defense so far. So I expect a little bit of regression here, but the team total and the line for the Seahawks in this game is 23.5. I've got to be honest, I'm more confident in backing the offensive viewpoint for the Seahawks than the Giants' defensive viewpoint. And the Giants have managed to keep games close due to their defense playing so well. I think it's only a matter of time before they struggle to contain a team like the Seahawks who have multiple options on offense. If it's not the ground game that averages 2 touchdowns per game, then it's going to be their passing game that averages the most pass yards per game in the league. I'm expecting some sort of regression for the Giants defense, and I'm certainly expecting the Seahawks to continue the trend they have going on of them scoring 23 plus points, and I think we're going to cash the team total over for the Seahawks. So we're going to go 1 unit, Seattle Seahawks, team total over 23.5 at odds of 1.83. Now we're on to my final play, which is going to be Monday Night Football between New Orleans Saints and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this one is going to be like Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. In my opinion, there isn't much to say about this game. This is the other bet that I locked in on Discord early in the week. So the line could and should have moved by now. I'm lucky enough to have got it at a reasonable number. But we're going to break it down right now. So the Chiefs head into this game unbeaten. One of two with themselves and the Vikings. But just because they're unbeaten, it doesn't mean they've played well. In all wins so far this season have been by one score. And in fact, 9 of the last 10 wins have been one-score wins. Patrick Mahomes threw a pick. He potentially tore Rashid Rice's ACL in the same play. Accidental, I know, but still turned out to be a huge blow for their offense. They struggled on offense against the Chargers team, when they were without Rashid Rice, and the Chargers were without star Derwin James as well, and Joey Bosa. It was noticeable that Herbert was hurt for most of the game. He was hobbling around, and the Chiefs, they couldn't navigate themselves around it. They couldn't create some sort of separation between an injured Herbert and a defensiveless James and Bosa. The Chiefs' first touchdown was essentially a go route for Xavier Worthy, who everyone knows he won't be caught once he gets going. Pat threw it up, he hoped for the best, and Worthy caught it, ran in the touchdown. I think it was a 56-yarder. With that being said, they left it late to actually win the game, and it was in the last 6 minutes to set up a P-Ryan rushing touchdown to eventually win the game. They're now without Rashid Rice, obviously Hollywood Brown on IR, Isaiah Pacheco on IR, and they have brought in Kareem Hunt, but I don't think he's going to be the focal point of this offense. Travis Kelce also hasn't played too well to start the season either. And if you look on the other side, the Saints have looked good on defense to start the year as well. That was to be expected. They are averaging. They're inside the top 10 for least points allowed, averaging just 17.5. They came out the blocks hot in their first 2 games, but have since cooled. They had 91 points in the first 2 games, and then just 12 and 24 in weeks 3 and 4. But still, they lead the league in points per game, and they are ranked 6th in the league for total yardage per game. The Chiefs are down in 13th and 14th in those same metrics. The Saints must be fairly disappointed being 2-0. 2-2, sorry. They must be fairly disappointed being 2-2. The 2 losses came on their opponents' final possessions in both games. Saquon Barkley running a touchdown for the Eagles with 1 minute remaining, and then the Falcons kicked a walk-off field goal to win in week 4. But that's just the ebbs and flows of football, I suppose. In my opinion, they do have some things to be proud of and confident in, and things they would like to build upon as the season progresses. One of those positives would be the fact they are able to keep Derek Carr upright. That would allow him to make those all-important plays. Obviously, they like to send Rashid Shaheed downfield on long go routes, just as the Chiefs do with Xavier Worthy. And obviously, with them keeping him upright, allows him to make those plays. The Saints O-line average one sack on Carr per game, and I think he has actually only had 1 in each 4, which is 1 per game as well. They faced some elite pass rushers as well. Micah Parsons, Matthew Judon, Brandon Graham as well. They've all managed to keep quiet. So, I don't deny they have what it takes to stop Chris Jones this week. They've been a good offense and defensive team this year, and they've been competitive in all 4 games. Now, the line for this game is -5 for the home team Chiefs, but I'm going to roll with the Saints +5. They've managed to cover +5 in all 4 games to start the year, and as I said for the Chiefs, 9 of the last 10 wins, they were all within 1 score. And as I said for the Saints, both of those losses came on the final drive, so don't be surprised to see them try and tighten things up against this depleted Chiefs offense and potentially even get the victory. The Chiefs don't fill me with enough confidence to take them to win by 5 points, especially with the way they've been playing so far. They've been very, very fluky, I think. They're very lucky to be 4-0. They've been let off with flags late in the games. They've scored a moonshot throw touchdown, and they've not really been putting together really nice scoring drives. The Saints have been much improved. They've been really impressive, and I'm much more confident in taking them to give the Chiefs problems on offense and in defense. So I'm going to take the points for New Orleans. Again, I posted this one early in the Discord. Line has probably moved around, so shop around for best odds. If you're not sure whether to take a specific line, drop me a comment below, or hit me up on Twitter. I will get back to you with a bit more of a analytical view whether to take the new line. But again, it pays to be in the Discord early. Click the link below, join the Discord. So I got this at +5, so we're going to go 1 unit New Orleans Saints +5 at 1.9. So that actually brings us to the end of this episode. So I'm going to quickly run through my NFL Week 5 betting card. They're all 1 unit, and it's going to start off with the Vikings -2.5 at 1.95. Vikings and Jets over 40.5 at 1.9. Commanders -3 at 1.85. Ravens -2 at 1.95. Ravens over 163.5 rushing yards at 1.9. Seahawks team total over 23.5 at 1.83, and the Saints +5 at 1.9. Now, again, quick reminder, the Ravens over 163.5 rushing yards and the Saints +5 were posted in Discord early this week. So I'm going to say it again. If you're not in the Discord, get in the Discord. The link is on my Linktree link in this bio, in the description of this video. Click it, go down to Discord, join the Discord. 24/7 chat. Myself, daily college football, college basketball, run the Discord together. It's our Discord. We've got a bunch of cool guys, talking 24/7, sharing questions, sharing thoughts, opinions, stats, facts, anything and everything. And it's a really cool community to be in. So click the link, join it. You get access to all my plays, all my breakdowns, and you'll get the early plays that we post as well. Myself and Daily does it all the time. He posts some sharp lines before they move, and it's just a cool community to be in. So I'm gonna log off on this one. I appreciate everyone for staying this long. Appreciate everyone, and hopefully you tail my bets. Hopefully we get a winning week this week. And again, click the link below. Join me on all socials. Follow, like, subscribe, share, and let's lock and load. And I'll catch you next week for the recap next week. Catch you later.